Greetings, sir. How are you? Can you hear us?
Okay, let's try that.
All right, here we go. Here we go.
Okay.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
All
I'm
right.
just going to ask you to repeat because it was choppy earlier.
Yeah,
The audience know what you've been up to since the last election in 2017.
sure. So after the last election, I'd never left my employment when I was a minister, and continued then full time as regional counsel for a large captive management and broking company. And then I also got remarried. I also have an 8-month-old daughter with my beautiful wife. I have three other children, 17 and 13-year-old twins. And I had also recently started a podcast, which I've taken a step back from, obviously, because of the election, and have been doing different projects here and there. So, like everyone else, leading life. And as you
Indeed.
said, I've been doing op-eds and things as well.
Indeed. When I think of you, and I said this last week, I can't talk behind people's backs because it's all
Mm.
recorded, so I can see what I say. Um, but it's interesting because my issue, personally, and this may be different from the audience and Bermudians, I take the pathways and the airport, which the airport was not under you, but you were part of the party. Take that stuff away, and I still had like things that I had challenges with when it came to yourself. And
Mhm.
one of the issues I have with most politicians is prior to being elected, they're friendly, they're engaging. You in particular had done my talk show when I was at Hot 107.5 when you
Mhm.
first became the BDA, and then when I was up Bermuda Broadcasting in 2011. And I've seen this. It's not on you, but I've seen this. I've been in rooms where people have been elected to run, and they say, "Oh, this, that, and the other." They're fighting, and maybe it's because your workload. You just said you never left your full time employment. You don't have time to engage as much with people. My issue was more so the attitude of the person, and for that, I ask you, were there lessons in how you believe you came across? And I'm not going to talk about those issues because I'm sure the audience will have them, but how you came across to people. And I'll use a perfect example because we don't do bias here.
Mhm.
Colonel Birch, probably the most unfriendly person in politics we've ever seen. He's some people think he's miserable. He doesn't talk to people. He's angry. I actually said in private conversation, I liken you to him. The only difference is Black Bermudians are willing to put up with Colonel Birch, who took about 4 or 5 elections like this to actually get elected, right? Whereas they deemed you, well, who is this? And this is not my words. Who's this white Canadian guy to talk to us and say this and that? So I didn't see much difference other than people not willing to accept it because they were told you were, well, first of all, dispel that. Are you per se, like you want to dispel that? Like you are Bermudian, correct?
Well, you have to be Bermudian, Jamal, to kind of
Right.
be in the house. I mean, you got to be in a somewhere who's voting. Yes, I mean, I came to Bermuda, Jamal, when I was 3.5 years old.
Uh-huh.
So yes, I was born in Canada, but many of us that are now Bermudian or are Bermudian were born in many different places. So it's kind of just a way to it's almost a smear to try and
Uh-huh.
disassociate you from being Bermudian.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's sad when people do that to try and disassociate you from what you are and what you believe in. But I mean, I'm happy to address all these things, Jamal. I think
Yeah.
in the first instance, lessons learned, communication, including getting your computer right the first time, and figuring that out. But uh, you know, we were in a very tough spot when we were in government, and had, as you've said, it was a very heavy workload. I had a young family. I had a full time job. I was also a minister and putting in just an inordinate amount of hours. I think that the media has a part to play as well in terms of how people are perceived. I still get it. Oh, Mr. Fay, I don't realize how tall you are. I'm 6'2". I guess people thought I was 5'5" or something. I don't know, but I still get it to this day. Mr. Fay, I thought you were much shorter. I mean, it's weird. Or hey, it's nice to see you smile. Well, of course, what do people see in the newspaper is a picture that the World Gazette maybe captures in the middle of a speech, and then the file editors just use that photograph all the time. So that paints a picture of this miserable man who's kind of around, and I know that's not true. I think my friends and those that know me know and interact with me knows that's not true.
Mhm.
I think I got a bit of a bum rap on that, to be fair. But people can judge that for themselves in conversations with me. The media doesn't always give that best perception of people. It doesn't make good news, I suppose. But in terms of comparisons to other people, that's for other people to make those decisions. It's not for me. What I was as a minister was a very hardworking minister, and I'm proud of that. In terms of how we could have communicated things better, everybody can learn lessons on that, Jamel, anytime in terms of how you get your story out. But again, when you look at what we were up against in terms of a wrecked economy, things were in awful state. There was really no money in the kitty when we came in, and we had to do everything we could to kind of get our face to the grindstone and get on with things and try and bring direct inward investment to Bermuda and do our best for the people of Bermuda, for all Bermudians. And the narrative gets spun, as you said, oh, this Canadian guy that, is telling us what to do. Okay, this PLP members that were born in other places that no one seems to make a meal of that. And that's unfortunate. You can extrapolate what that may or may not be about. But take people as their face. If they're saying to you, this is what we're trying to achieve, there's no conspiracy here. I see all these things online. We can look at how things could have gone better. But I don't think that's where we are right now. I think, again, the economy is not doing well. There's a lot of complaints in the community about the state of our country, and we're looking for solutions, and people want solutions. I hear that on the doorstep, and so do other candidates. What are the solutions for Bermuda's problems today? I can't hear you, Jamel.
Sorry. Thank you
Yep.
for saying that.
Yep.
I'm not going to sit here and act like the media doesn't play a role in this. I mean, Malcolm X told us about this many years ago. And that's why I appreciate this show, because you have an opportunity to come and communicate directly and engage with an audience who, they have questions, they want answers. But something, I want to shift a bit.
Okay.
Because, and these are just a few things I've written that, have been said from the PLP. It was status to PRCs. Giving children of expats the opportunity to compete with Bermudian students for summer employment, making it where people are allowed to hire foreign acts without having a local. These are just a few of the things that are being pushed or have been pushed. Can you explain the thinking behind this? And because you said communication was one of the biggest problems. Can you communicate right now to Bermudians who were against all of these things why they should understand this was best for Bermuda?
Okay, so let's address this one point up front about, and it's a narrative that's gone on and on and on, that what we were trying to do was have Bermudians compete with foreign children. A lot of what we had put forward had been proposed by a number of different working groups on the alphabet group side, so international business, etc. We shared those matters with other alphabet groups, including the TUC, which is Trade Union Congress, to try and get input. We threw in all the ideas that had come out, one of which was allowing individuals who were here with their children to do summer employment and things. And the reason for that, the thought process behind that was, it wasn't it wasn't designed to kind of make Bermudians be pushed down. What we were trying to do was get people to stay. And what the demographics showed in the population information that we had was, when you have individuals who are living in Bermuda that have been here for 10, 15, 20 years, they may have come here single, they meet somebody, they get married, it may be to another work permit holder, then they have children, and then they have to start making decisions. Do they stay or do they go? And one of the things that was the biggest thing for them to leave was, when their children are hitting 16, what are these kids supposed to do? So it was, how can we encourage these people to stay? Because we can't afford to have any more people leave. The economy couldn't afford that. Did we think of all the blowback? No. So what we did is we withdrew it, and we said, okay, people aren't satisfied with that. We haven't got the message across, but it's used as this kind of this beating stick all the time. But what we were trying to do is get people to stay. And by staying, that helped Bermuda's growth and helped Bermuda's economy, because every time people leave, that's less purchasing power. It's less people buying groceries. It's less people paying in for health. It's less people paying into any number of government services by way of taxation and payroll tax. The knock-on effect of people leaving, whether they're Bermudian or guest workers, is a disaster for the local economy. We were trying to find ways at the time to bring direct inward investment and try and find ways to make people stay so that Bermuda's economy would continue to would grow. So everything that we did, we had that in mind. We explored a number of things. Commercial immigration was one, which we rejected. Commercial immigration, by the way, is very similar now to what the PLP is doing in terms of economic investment certificates and things like that, okay? Where you can come in, you can buy a house, you can get residency, and after a period of time, you can apply for basically a residential certificate.
Mhm.
Those types of initiatives, in fact, we rejected because we thought that's not actually adding cultural value to the community. What we then thought was, what we need to do is, we're still seeing so many people leaving.
Mhm.
They're feeling like they have no future. We were competing with jurisdictions like Cayman, where you can go down to Cayman and people can get status within 11 years. So you're losing, again, these individuals who leave so they can secure a future for their family. And again, every time someone leaves, then that's a loss to our economic value. When people had been here, our proposal had been at the time 20 years for status, if you'd been here 20 years or more, and 15 years PRC. Again, we felt that that was appropriate because these individuals are not new immigrants that have just arrived and they get something after a year. They would have been here for 20 plus years, invested in the economy, have their kids here, eating out in the restaurants, traveling back and forth, adding value, hiring Bermudians, being part of Bermuda's fabric, culture, and our entire being. They're nurses, they're doctors, they're underwriters, they're restaurant workers, they're throughout our entire society. And many of us as Bermudians marry
But
guests
you
from.
understand the concerns, and I think we can all agree, right, that Bermuda needs more people. But you understand the concerns is that, well, you can't just do this in every country, right? That's number
Well,
one.
Jamal, I tell you, if I may, I'm going to interrupt because
Let me just finish this
the
point.
only
But
the only place.
let me finish this point. You
Okay,
can't
yeah.
country. Or when you use Cayman as an example, you realize you give firepower to those who oppose you because basically they feel like, and I hate to use this term, in Cayman, there's been an ethnic cleansing of, Caymanians, right? So I think that's where the you mentioned communication, and I'm no expert at PR, but that's where you kind of lose people when you use Cayman, an island where the big argument against what you're saying is that, well, what about Bermudians? In Cayman, there's more, non-Bermudians than Caymanians. So how can you communicate that better to get people to say, well, no, it's not going to look like the Cayman in 5 or 15 years? I get what you're saying, that it was not bringing new people here. It was just making sure those who are already here, right,
But
have.
that's the key. That's the key, Jamal. In Cayman, and
Mhm.
again, yeah. Look, if I use the United States as an example, you can't make a fair comparison because it's not even remotely the same. It's difficult to use other jurisdictions. I'm not saying we want it to be Cayman. All I'm saying to you is that people were leaving after being here 20 years. In Cayman, you get it after like 7 or 11, which is, we never proposed anything like that. The government has moved forward and said, okay, after 20 years, you get PRC. That's great. At least it's something to get people to remain because it continues to grow the economy. But again, that's 10 years ago now, Jamal. It's like 9.5 years ago that those proposals were made. And I don't necessarily accept the argument that it's changing our culture because these people were already here. Look, I would accept all of the arguments that it's going to change our culture if we said after 3, 4, 5 years, hey, come on in, we'll give you whatever you want. That was never that.
Mhm.
And in fact, when people say, well, you were trying to, I mean, one of the things is I was trying to dilute the PLP base. Let me tell you something. And this is, you can go and look at the statistics. When the PLP first introduced PRC, way back, they had a groundswell of support because people said this party actually really understands my plight. The same with those that got status back then, 20, 30 years ago. I can't presuppose who votes for who. Never the intent. All we want to do is get people to stay. But again, we can go all afternoon or all day about it. What I'd like to do is kind of if I can, is move away from that and say, what are we going to try and achieve?
Mhm.
Look, I get it, Jamal. I've said it so many times that the way in which we tried to get a message across was drowned out. I think you'd mentioned it earlier and in your when you kind of started the show today. They say there was no public consultation. We went out to town halls. We tried to communicate. I actually sat down with the leaders of the People's Campaign. I sat down with Walton Brown himself. I sat down with so many people and went through. And by the way, it was obviously a great political strategy to demonize and things, but it's to the detriment. Ultimately, I still feel it was a detriment to our overall economic success for Bermudians. But people can differ, and that's what we're entitled to do. We're entitled to differ. But we've moved away from that now. I'm not coming in here and have never once mentioned pathways. Everyone else likes to talk about it.
And
I
I want to
certainly,
move on because we got so much other stuff to discuss. But I do
yeah.
think one last point is
Hmm.
I remember I was traveling for work and I got a call from someone in Bermuda. And this was after Michael Donkley had already asked me and talked to me about it, about things like status and so on. And it was asked by a union president and asked me my thoughts on it. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I all I knew was what was being shared. It wasn't something. And then as I started to ask some older Bermudians, and one of the big concerns that was consistent with people who didn't know each other was, I just feel like it's all about the vote. And I know you just mentioned, you spoke on that just now, but there are people who feel like, based on history, immigration has always been used to dilute the vote. What you're saying, and we can move on from this, is that was never the intent. That was never even discussed.
Never the intent. And in fact, I saw something yesterday. Someone said, "Oh, please, ask Mr. Fay about his comments that once we get them in, the PLP will never win." That's wholly rejected. And I mean, it's ridiculous for anyone to presuppose. So does anyone think that I knew? How could I ever have known or
Mhm,
had the time to look at the identity of anyone who may have fallen within what we were proposing and then also presuppose their vote?
mhm,
That's a ridiculous way to kind of put things forward, in my view.
mhm,
I understand the history. I
mhm,
also understand that immigration laws were used to keep down Bermudians, particularly Black Bermudians. I said that at the time. That was nothing to do with anything like that. In fact, you may remember that it was in the 70s where people that had just been resident in Bermuda could get a vote. Wholly wrong, wholly ridiculous. Nothing like that. Look, what we're trying to do is create opportunity for Bermudians.
mhm,
We were trying to do it then. We came up with ideas that we thought could work. Some worked, some did not. And I think that we have a lot of things that we can be very proud of from that record. What we're looking at now is saying, again, what can we do to
mhm.
bring about real and meaningful opportunity for all Bermudians?
Indeed.
Going forward. And that's what you get involved for. It's very easy to sit on the sidelines and complain, or you can get stuck in. And I think that's representative of why we have 109 candidates running in this election. I think people
And
are dissatisfied, right?
speaking on that, I mean, with all the controversies and perspectives that have been developed about you, right?
Hmm.
By various people, and maybe the media again plays a role in that. Why have you decided? I mean, you just said you've got a full-time job, you've got a beautiful family, young baby. Why have you decided to return to the political arena?
No, great question, Jamal. I think it was something that I felt that I couldn't just sit on the sidelines. I know what I can do. I know what I'm capable of doing, and making a real contribution to Bermuda's success. We did a lot of things that were great. We did bring new hotel development. One didn't go the way we wanted it to, but the Lauren did, St. Regis did, the Azure did. We did very well on that. We brought the triathlon series to Bermuda. We brought in mini car legislation that, by the way, has increased. We brought, cruise ships to St. George's. We had an NCL dedicated ferry. We brought UNESCO World Heritage Fund to St. George's. We did some amazing things. Those are the things that I would hope that people would talk about. All of those things were amazing decisions that continue to this day to benefit Bermuda's economic opportunity.
Mm,
In terms of getting involved, I believe that with to be fair, with the skills that I did get over that period of time as a minister, I feel I can add some value, and that's for that's for the voters of constituency 20 to make up their minds.
Mhm.
I'm excited about it, Jamal. I also felt if I didn't, I'd probably regret not trying,
Mm.
because I really believe in it. And look, so do 108 other candidates. They
Mhm.
believe that they can make a difference. I don't think I'm alone in that in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
When you talk to candidates from across the divide, it's sad it's sad I even use that language of the divide. When you actually talk to candidates from PLP, FDM, independents,
Mhm.
eh, you got to believe that what they're telling you is I'm doing this because I care about my community.
Right.
Some candidates care about particular very local issues within their constituencies. Some have a particular area that they have an interest in. Others have an overall interest. But everyone, I believe, is doing it because they want to contribute. That's just a fact. So that's why I wanted to. We had the long conversations at home about it. Um, it's sad that the PLPs had to pivot. Clearly, they were ready for an election, and they've had to pivot their campaign to go negative specifically on me.
Mhm.
I don't think people want to hear about that. I think people really genuinely want to hear, what is it we're going to try and do for Bermuda and Bermudians? What is it that we're going to do going forward to help seniors? All of these things: healthcare reform, education reform, road works, public infrastructure works. All of these things matter to people now. The OBA has not been going on banding on about pathways. That is, we've done it today. We did it at my press conference. The PLP wants us to think about that, I
Mhm.
believe, to move away from what I believe is a pretty dismal record.
So, there are many people who agree with what you just said. So, with that said, where do you believe that you went wrong as a government minister? What are you planning to do differently going forward if successful in this election? What are you going to say? You know what? Again, communication comes up a lot. I mean, you said, I likened you. My comparison was Colonel Birch, right? You came across
That's
very
an unfair. That's unfair, Jamal. I mean, we can't
fair
keep
enough.
repeating that narrative.
I'm just saying you individuals, in my opinion, you came across
Yeah, yeah.
brilliant, right? And I'm not saying that you're both bad people. I'm simply saying that you come across, and I'll be very clear on what I mean by that.
Mm.
They come across just very focused on the work, and that's a compliment. It's not a bad thing. It's you're just focused on the work, no small talk. That's just how you came across, right? But in saying that, he never changed his approach when he finally got elected, right? Um, would you change your approach? What would you do differently going forward? Because as you just said, there's a lot of things: healthcare reform, education. Like there's a lot to do. How are you going to change to make things happen?
Yeah, no, that's fair, Jamal. I mean, I think, if you look back and you think of all of the items that essentially I was asked to do on behalf of the OBA, I was put into portfolios that are controversial: planning, municipalities, immigration, labor. Those are all very heavy portfolios. And when you're trying to get the economy going and economic growth, it's an awful lot of work. And I think yeah, okay, let's get on with it. We really need to do this for the benefit of Bermuda. And time, certainly in my view, was of the essence. If I could go back in time, of course I would say, geez, look, please don't give this to me to deal with. Please don't. It's enough now to be able to do all of the things that I'm being asked to do. We had an amazing team, and this is the thing. I think, yes, so I was the front person for it, but to get a lot of the things done that we were very successful with, we had amazing public servants who did the work. So when you look at things like immigration, and we all pick on pathways, but we were the ones that implemented a civil penalty regime to catch out employers that were playing the immigration system. We brought in these wanted posters. We brought in a number of different things that we could say, okay, on the one hand, you're going to get this, but on the other hand, if you muck around, you're going to be punished, and it's not going to be fun for you. We had a very good immigration board that, by the way, was appointed from individuals from across the community that help make decisions on these things. So yes, I would go back and say that, but I would also go back and say, I understand people don't know me. I get that. A lot of people will say that was that guy. Um, Talk to me, engage with me, and as we are today. And we're going to agree sometimes to disagree, but all in all, you're going to get someone who's going to tell you what they think. What I think, Jamal, and I'll tell you a little story. I have often, I've walked past the taxi ranks and the minibus ranks, and I speak to a lot of these guys over the years, right? That I worked with and had interactions with when I was Minister for Transport, Tourism, and Municipalities. And one of them took me aside and said, Michael, I'd love it if you got back involved because you were the only minister that actually gave us a straight answer. I might not have liked your answer, but at least I knew what the answer was so I could move on and think about other things. It's not fair to just drag people along or play them and say, yeah, yeah, I'll do it, or yeah, I'll get to you, or let's set a meeting up and you never meet with them. At least with what I felt you were getting with me was, I'm going to tell you the straight answer. It's either going to be yes or it's going to be no. Or listen, I think we can do something here. Let's tweak it, but let's actually make it. Let's work together to do it. And and we did that successfully on any number of occasions, including mini car legislation when we amended some taxi red legislation. So taxi drivers felt that they weren't going to lose their livelihood, make the roads safer for guests, and also get the taxi drivers the ability to do different things that they've been asking for many, 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 many years. That was the reputation I had. Yes, a hardworking minister. Did I come across as maybe I don't know, unfriendly or aloof? I'm sad about that. I genuinely am sad about that. And I think that again, you have interactions with people, you learn about them as you talk to them, right? One
Yeah.
on one.
Yeah. Audience, I'll get to your questions and comments in a second. I haven't forgotten about you. On your candidacy, right?
Mm.
Um, there have been many people who say the One Bermuda Alliance as a political party has made this so easy for the PLP, own goal after own goal. Some even viewed your announcement as an OBA candidate as an own goal. What are your thoughts on first party politics? Because as some have said, the whole independent movement seems like you know indictment on party politics. But how do you feel about the state of people thinking the OBA has made it easy, scoring own goals? And finally, your appointment, do you think it will negatively impact the chances for the One Bermuda Alliance overall?
No, I don't. I don't, Jamel, and I don't think that the party believes that either. Otherwise, frankly, I wouldn't have been selected. I think, yes, as anybody would have concern and say, is this going to be problematic? And I chatted with the candidates and I laid, I think, some concerns. And it's not an issue, quite frankly, that they're hearing on the doorstep. People are saying, and I heard someone tell me the other day, I'm not interested in smear campaigns. I'm interested in hearing what people are going to do to make Bermuda a better place. Everyone is entitled to have another opportunity to give a go of it. So that's the first thing. It's just an easy smear to say, oh, this is what happened. Mostly, look, 99% of what's being said, by the way, is just factually desperately inaccurate. I heard one the other day that I was ordering people to be pepper sprayed. I mean, I can't even get some of that through my head, to be honest with you. And the interesting thing is, I mean, if you want facts, for the airport protest on the 2nd of December 2016, I was actually off island on government business in the portfolio of tourism, transport, municipalities. I wasn't even on the island. And so things get twisted. People say things. The OBA did a poor, I think, communication strategy overall, not defeating some of the stuff that has kind of gotten into folklore and gotten into the historical record. In terms of, is it a known goal? No. I think what people are looking for is those that really care about Bermuda, and I think anyone that knows me will know that that's as accurate as it can be. Um,
Mhm.
there are a number of different things, as we said, that need to be dealt with, and we have a team that is able to do it. And it's been canvassing very hard over the last four years or so since the last election to get our message across on the
Okay.
doorstep. And as you said, I mean, interestingly, Jamal, you led today with, is doorstep politics the way forward? Of course, you want town halls, and you're right, they're very difficult. And the reason I think they're difficult is because A lot of people don't like to be heard in public. They don't want their neighbor to know what they really think because we're a small community. You don't want to irritate people and
Yeah.
say something, and the next day you see them in the grocery store and you think, "Oh my God, this isn't good." Who Nobody wants that. So I think people really will open up on the doorstep, and they're opening up to you, and it's a very intimate thing.
Yeah.
They're telling you things that they might not even tell some of their family members, and they're trusting you with that and saying, look, I've only just met you. I met like someone this the other night I've never met before,
Yeah.
who literally says, so glad that you're the candidate here. Told me a thing, kind of almost whispered and said, look, these are things I have concerns about.
Mhm.
And you take that information, okay, well, that's not to be shared with anyone else. That's an intimate discussion you have with somebody based on trust and faith. And that's important. And I think that's important for all candidates to have that opportunity. It
Mhm.
is one on the doorstep in Bermuda. Smear
Yeah.
campaigns, overall ads, I think most people don't. If you can go to someone's doorstep and have that intimate conversation, it's very meaningful for people.
Indeed. Audience, again, I'll get to you. Got a couple more questions here. So let's say the One Bermuda Alliance is successful at the polls,
Hmm.
right? And Michael Fahy wins his seat. How do we know that if you get back into government, you won't be on some sort of revenge mission and say, you know what, I'm pushing this through ASAP? Like, how are you going to respond to what happened in 2017? Because there have been people who said, no, we can't trust that this is, like why should Bermudians trust Michael Fahy in government again?
Okay. Let I was part of a cabinet, and I couldn't just run out and do things on my own. Decisions were made as a cabinet based on the circumstances that we felt that we were in. Um, we were in a disaster zone when we became government and had to make decisions that nobody wants to have to make. Nobody wants to go out and make decisions that eventually lead to a protest. Nobody wants that. You think, well, I've done something wrong. We're not countering some of the poor, the false messaging that's going out. The One Bermuda Alliance has presented a platform about creating opportunity, about helping our seniors, about improving education through stakeholder engagement and those kinds of things. Those are the items that we need to concentrate on. How it works is the civil servants, if when you win government, they take that platform and they say, okay, here's the things that you say. What are you going to do? And you have to then put those plans down, and that's when the beginning of starting legislation, consultation, working groups, taking things to cabinet, taking things to your caucus, getting overall engagement in the process. Um, so, I hear all kinds of things. Well, this guy is, behind the curtains. This guy's doing this. I don't know if I should be flattered that people think I've got that kind of power and control over the minds of others. It's crazy. I was in a position where I had to make controversial decisions. What I will promise people, and I will continue to promise this, is I will do what is in the interests of Bermuda and Bermudians because that is what we are tasked to do. How can we grow our economy? How can we do these things? And if the stuff that we need to think about, we're going to have to and will increase an opportunity for consultation. Again, remember when we came into government in 2012, we didn't have money in the pockets to pay civil servants. We had to borrow money. Um, I don't. I hope that's not the position. Should we get in and see that again? Um, but rest assured that when you're meeting these wonderful candidates that we have, that I've had an opportunity to spend time with, I think you're going to hear a very different way of thinking. That perhaps people had this perception of the OBA, and I said this as well. That Jamel, that what kind of organization honestly would create itself to just represent one small demographic, whether it's racial, economic, sex, anything, and expect to be successful? I don't believe that anyone should be able to do that. The OBA is this broad church. Jerry Richardson's explained it. You're going to get people from so many different backgrounds that come in that room and hash out what is in the best interest of Bermuda. It's a great space to be in that form of engagement, that you're getting individuals from all over the island that are coming in that room and coming up with solutions for Bermuda. And the OBA has done an amazing job rebuilding from, its loss in 2017 and then again in 2020.
All righty. I'm going to go to the audience. We got quite a lot of questions. If we could be concise with some of the answers, just so we can get through some. Charles,
Sure. Yeah.
second, he's asking, when Mr. Fahy heard the minister say that we need 8,400 more people in Bermuda, was he surprised? Where does he think that number came from?
Wasn't surprised at all. That number has come, I would assume, from the statistical analysis about how many individuals you need to having a successful economy that's paying for the taxes that pay for the budget. We're short people in Bermuda to have a thriving economy and also to help replace our population. You need 2.1 people born to every person essentially to renew your population, and we're not at that point. You can look at the stats from the hospital. Some days you have no one born at all. You might have less than 30 a month. That's not renewing ourselves. That's a global phenomenon. We have to start to wrestle with that and help everyone understand what that means for our economic success and our healthcare system and our taxes and our public servants. How do we pay for that? We need people.
Well, Denise Hollis says, is there any plan to get Bermudians to return home? And Charles H. Jefferson II also says, should the next government focus on trying to attract Bermudians to return? I mean, that would help the population, right?
100%. And what I said to on another interview the other day, one of the biggest problems that we've had, the PLP has recognized it, the PLP has said it. It's not just the OBA doing and saying things because we're trying to scaremonger anyone. Not at all. One of the biggest problems, emigration. We know just from the population census and the information that we can actually get a hold on that we have lost so many Bermudians. We have to make it attractive for them to come back. That is through increasing opportunities through jobs. It's increasing with inward investment. It's increasing and doing better with our education system. And it's trying to lower the cost of living so that when Bermudians do come back, they don't then leave again and say, I can't afford to retire here. I've heard that so many times where Bermudians have said, I'm still working. I'm 75 years old. I don't know when I'm going to stop working because I can't pay to remain. And everybody understands that. And we've got to work with every stakeholder possible to try and lower this cost and bring people back. We have to attract them back. And I think that also means ending some of the dialogue that goes on here. We're at each other's throats and we're saying terrible things about each other. Nobody wants that. People, do believe in Bermuda, and we believe in Bermuda's success. I think that's why people left sometimes too. It's just the level of what it just feels sometimes desperately uncomfortable here with the levels of disrespect that we seem to show each other. We can do so much better, and I really hope that we do.
Yeah, indeed. I just want to go back real quickly about, the diversity and the groups. And I think it's important not to forget the history of why certain groups begin. And I think if I remember correctly, it was a labor union, it was the labor movement in terms of the PLP's creation. Now, whether or not
1964 for the PLP. Yeah.
and whether that still exists with the current leadership, like whether the the focus is still the same, I'm not in the circle, so I won't know. But I don't want people to kind of go away with this and how you all like clipping stuff off the show that we're dismissing that certain groups do come together because they were disenfranchised. So I just don't want that to get lost because whether it's the Black Panthers or some all women's organizations, some of them literally come together because they've been disenfranchised. So I don't want that to be diminished in you saying that the OBA, it's so many different, backgrounds and the like. Well, there can be a group of women who come from completely different backgrounds. I've been in rooms full of Black people who are very different from me. So I want to clarify that because I know.
I think let's make that point really clear, John. I'm in no way, and I've said it when I was in different roles, in no way dismissing the history of the PLP and the amazing things that they did do to put pressure on a lot of the things that were wrong back then. We know what went wrong back then. You can look at Bermuda's history, the history that led up to the riots, the history that led to people feeling desperate and were disenfranchised, and and how some of those things went that were just desperately wrong. All I'm now saying is that with the OBA, what you have is an organization. When people say, oh, this is an organization for the elite, I'm saying to you, that's trash, basically. This is a party that is out to try and help all Bermudians and do our best job for everyone. That's all I'm saying. I'm certainly not dismissing anything from the past, because I mean that's a one that'd be a great conversation now, because some of the stuff I dislike when people try and suggest that we don't know our history. Look, I've said it 1,000 times, to be honest with you, is that some of the stuff that went on, how could some people ever forgive? I think I'd be hard pressed to forgive a lot of stuff that people, particularly the black population of Bermuda, had to deal with and put up with, and think that, oh, it's just this that people were treated the way they were treated. It's abhorrent, right?
Yeah.
And all I'm saying is, now you look at what the OBA is a far cry removed from some of the things that perhaps people felt that what the United Bermuda Party was when that organization first formed. Things were different then compared to what they are now. It doesn't dismiss history. You have to also move forward too and say, how can you do things a little differently,
Okay.
right?
Got a few more questions. We've got Derek Hendrickson says, what is the opinion of the job the OBA has done as the opposition?
Look, I think that after the 2017 election, I think that the opposition could have done a lot better. And I would say the same leading up to 2020 and subsequent. The OBA, we've all had to learn some very difficult lessons, knowing that what we believed we were doing is right and trying to communicate in a better way. Look, some people's communication styles are going to be better than mine. Mine are worse than others. But I think if you can listen to what we're trying to, that the message that we're getting across, I think does resonate when they're on the doorstep with individuals face to face. And I think that's very important.
This comment made me smile. Suzanne Ingham says, okay, Mr. Fahy, I'm giving you some grace here, but I'm watching you closely.
Okay.
She's watching
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Suzanne. Yeah.
A few more questions.
Yeah.
Mari Simon says, do you think the PLP cabinet knew about the AG hiring her husband? Ooh.
I can't comment on that. I don't know. I mean, I think let's just make how kind of clear something up as well, just generally, so that people understand how some of that works. Is the ministers do not and should not get involved in the hiring of public servants. Okay, ministers are supposed to set policy. Ministers are supposed to guide policy, and the senior public servants, the permanent secretaries, are the ones through the public service deal with appointments, discipline issues, promotions, all those things. That's not a minister's remit at all. Ministers have the opportunity to hire personal consultants. If that, I think it depends on which government is in. I think each of us maybe would are entitled to hire one if we decided to. It might be two now. I don't know, but you can hire consultants that it is outside necessarily the realm of public service appointments. So I'll leave that there. I don't know enough of the details of that particular hiring.
I even think a lot of people may not know that ministers are not supposed
Yeah.
to. All right, we've got a few more. We've got Nicole Smith. She's asking, how would you have communicated pathways differently to get the message across in a better way?
Yeah, that's, I had to reflect on that obviously a lot. I think the environment we were in was pretty harsh. We probably should have learned from the well-organized protests that had been put together on any number of other initiatives that we were looking at. As you've seen, when we were trying to communicate, there were individuals who had come in to just disrupt. And I don't to this day really know how I would ever handle that differently again. I mean, it's a bit shocking when you're trying to communicate, trying to get feedback, trying to get consultation, and you're shouted down more than once by groups of individuals who just don't want to hear what you've got to say. But ultimately, there were many other people at the time who believed in what we were trying to achieve. So those that shout the loudest sometimes get heard the most, and that's not necessarily the best way to get things done. I think we would have taken a step back, explained things much longer. Look, we did CITV presentations, we did public meetings, we had meetings with the alphabet groups, we did everything that you can to try and at least get the message across. But if there's that much opposition to it, sometimes you just have to accept that it's not the right time. And there may
Indeed.
never be a time for that. But again, that's not something that the OBA is even considering. It's not even on
Okay.
the agenda. It's something that it's not there for us to be discussing at the moment.
Okay.
For us
Gonna
in
read.
this election.
Okay, gonna read a couple of comments, then I'll get to a question. Rashida Godwin says, "Mr. Fahy, you really need to learn about the history and disenfranchisement of certain groups of people by previous government immigration policies and have empathy when making such decisions." And then we have Dorian, who says, "If the OBA win the next election, my belief is that within 30 days, Mr. Richardson will be kicked to the curb and Mr. Fahy will become the leader." Now, let's just address this right now. Do you have aspirations to be the premier of Bermuda? And what do you say to both of those comments?
No to the last comment. I am running as a member of parliament for constituency 20. In the event that we're successful as government, it's up to the leader of the party, that's Jarian, to make determinations as to who he wishes to invite into cabinet. I would serve as asked. I've also said I've no interest in taking on the immigration portfolio, and I've made that clear in the event that I was even asked to do anything. That's not for me, and I didn't come into this to try and become premier of Bermuda. That's not. It's just not there. I mean, people are going to have their opinion no matter what I say anyway. In terms of the history, I'm very aware of it. In fact, I guess when people will get to know me, one of the things that I had studied in school was political science and history, and I'm a buff at history and I spoke to so many people. Way back in the day, I was part of CURE, and which was the Commission for Unity and Racial Equality, and am well aware of the history. But the history and the way that governments in the past used voting rights to disenfranchise Black people was wrong then, and it's wrong now. No one was trying to do that. And again, I could not in a million years presuppose anybody's way that they wish to vote. There seems to be this weird thought. There is. It's wrong how people think. I believe in that we are all supposed to, if you're Black, you just vote PLP, or if you're white, you're just going to vote the OBA. I don't believe it. I think I wish that we would all listen to what we each have to say and make a judgment based on that. Yes, there's going to be individuals who are always going to vote PLP, and there's always going to be people who always vote OBA. That's the same in any country. You're going to get diehard Republicans that no matter what, say, a candidate like Donald Trump spews out, are still going to say that guy's fantastic. And equally, you're going to get Democrats who would sit there and go, Joe Biden, who we saw the issues he had, are still going to vote Democrat no matter what. But what you've got to, I think, what political engagement is really talking about the arguments. Saying, okay, I think I can accept that, but I would never presuppose someone's vote. Someone said I'm going into a safe seat. I've not presupposed everything. I've been knocking on doors since I was announced. I've gone into some very wealthy neighborhoods, and I've gone into some very underprivileged neighborhoods, all within a stone's throw of each other. And you hear that some of the same things about the cost of living and some of those things. But do I go and immediately assume that that person is going to vote for me? I ask them, can you support me? Can I have your vote? I presuppose nothing, and I think it's wrong to do that.
Indeed. One last question from the audience. We've got Charles H. Jefferson II. He says, "What are Mr. Fahy's thoughts on a coalition government? What does he think are the chances of that happening? Does he agree that many would like to see that?"
Um, Coalitions are not heard of really in Bermuda. I mean, I don't think, and I don't believe there's ever been a coalition government in Bermuda. In fact, we know there hasn't. It's not uncommon in many jurisdictions. It's not uncommon in Europe, for example. It absolutely is something that happens all the time. Yes, it's a different type of voting system. It's all proportional. But we've seen in the UK, we've seen a coalition government. Back in the day, it was the Conservatives and Liberal Democrats. In Canada, at the moment, is a coalition with the Liberals and the NDP. So it can be done if there's no way to, if neither of the main parties, the OBA and PLP, or for that matter, the FDM has run candidates before. They don't have 36 candidates, but if in the event that no party was able to form a government, it would make absolute sense for any organization to have discussions with other individuals to try and form a government for the stability of the island.
Mhm.
In the event that you can't, then you have to have another election. I don't think anybody really wants that.
Mhm.
As we said, we're tired now. Jamel, you're going to get your spa session this week, probably, as you said. I'll wait till after the 18th. But you see, the point is nobody wants to go through all of this again, particularly the voter,
Mhm.
and hearing some of the rhetoric and all of these things. So short answer to Charles is, look, I wouldn't rule it out, but again, that's for the leaders of the parties to make those decisions. That would be for the leader of the party, Jaren, our deputy leader, Ben Smith, and have discussions with whomever they think would be necessary in order to form a government. And look, let's face it, I think the PLP would try and do the same. If they didn't get what they thought was required to form a good majority, they too would try and enter in discussions. That's not a bad thing.
Mhm. I guess, I mean, and again, thank you for this conversation.
Mm.
I think there's a trust problem among the electorate, and I think that's why we have 109 people seeking office.
Mhm.
I think people are exhausted. I think they're exhausted with party politics. I think
Mhm.
they're exhausted with politics, period. Um, there's a lot of trust that needs to be built.
Mhm.
In saying that, and we have to let you go. But what are your final words to not just those in constituency 20, but
Mhm.
final words? If this was your last opportunity to communicate with the electorate on a whole, what would you say to them to shape their perspective? This is not about one thing I like about this show. You can engage directly with the audience. They're not reading something you said that's been quoted, or they're not getting a clip of what you said on the news. You can speak to them directly. Let them know why they can trust Michael Fahy 2025 more than they did Michael Fahy 2017.
Yeah, thanks, Jamal. Thanks for having me on, and thanks to the audience. We'll get the communication microphones better next time. Um, do you know, you have to judge a person when you have that opportunity to speak them. I saw a sign. It was in fact, my wife brought it to my attention. It said, "Judge correctly." And what do I mean by that? Engage in those conversations and say, okay, I'm going to look this man in the eyes. I'm going to shake his hand and say, okay, let's have a discussion. What you will get from me is someone who is upfront. And I will say to you, yes, I agree. No, I don't agree. But if we don't agree, we can disagree respectfully and we can go our separate ways, or we can come together and work together. And I think that's the ethos of the One Bermuda Alliance. We're building and our party, and we're creating going to have a opportunity, create opportunity for Bermudians, and ask for your vote and give us that chance to demonstrate that we can do what we say we're going to do. And I look forward to the conversations with people as I walk through Hamilton, or as I'm in the constituency, or I'm at the grocery store. Have a conversation. My email's on the website. Send me an email. If I don't get back to you, it's not because I'm arrogant or whatever. I don't have all the time, but eventually I'll get to you. But I'd love to hear from people, and let's have a discussion. I think that's important.
Indeed.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mr. Fahy, honestly, thank you for making time, for engaging. Um, I don't know what will happen in the election, but what all I hope, and I say this with the most respect, I just hope that Bermudians get better than what they have today. And that's my hope with every election cycle. So all the best to you. And
Grand. Thank you.
thank you for your time. We'll chat soon.
Thanks, Jamal. Appreciate it.
Michael Fahy, folks, if you appreciated today's conversation, give us a thumbs up, a love, a like. Make sure you share the conversation with your friends, your family, your colleagues. Again, whatever platform you're on, like, love, follow, share, subscribe, join. I'm going to do a giveaway. Since, I mean, you all are 300 deep today. We're going to give you a giveaway when we come back. Give us 2 minutes, 10 seconds. We're going to come back, wrap it up. In the meantime, show us some love. Stick